Greetings, salutations, hello, ciao, this is Haven the Hare, and welcome to How Haven Did It. This is going to be the video for session 8 of my crew going through Hoard of the Dragon Queen, chapter 3, the Hatchery. So, spoiler warning, if you don't want to know more about this, go watch something else. If you don't mind having Hoard of the Dragon Queen ruined for you or finding out how I did it and the behind the scenes, behind the DM screen side of things, keep on watching. This chapter we pick up at about a little ways in. They cleaned out a couple of the rooms and then swung back, picked up Lutao, and are making their way through the rest of the cavern. The first thing that they came across that I kind of did is, with Eddie being already established in the cavern, he was able to kind of guide them through some of the traps. I didn't want it to be the entire time. We'll get to that in a minute. He also walked them through the first trap, but I also felt like just even though they knew the trap was there, some people are clumsy, Arkin, so I wanted them to continue. So on most of the party, I basically decided if they had at least a plus of anything in dexterity, I would let them just automatically jump the bad stair. If they don't, Arkin, I was going to make them roll, just to make sure they could actually make the leap over the stair. She did. She didn't then fall down and go boom, so we're all good. And by boom, I mean fall into the exploding fungus. They make their way past the fungus, and it ends up being kind of anticlimactic, but that's fine, because we then moved into where the Sturge were. And if you've read the campaign book, if they showed up during the day, the party would have actually had the Sturge flying down when it got loud with a bunch of bats floating around and everything, and it would have been a lot more chaotic. It didn't happen. They're in the middle of the night. So it's just a Sturge. But I still felt it was really good. I threw 15 Sturges at them and then had them grabbing on. And they ended up being a relatively easy enemy to defeat because once they grabbed on, they were sucking away on the blood like a mosquito in Michigan. So it was kind of easy for them just to go, and I love my Tabaxi because she just took her claws out and went, awesome. And then our kind of sick druid cutting the needle nose off of one of them and stabbing it with its own nose. It's kind of sick and awesome at the same time. It was really cool. We did that one totally theater of the mind. I played it all out. We just talked about the combat and how everybody was situated. I didn't use any of the models or anything because, first off, 15 Sturges, that's a lot of models, and I didn't feel like trying to pick them all up for something I'm probably never going to use again. Granted, most of the models, I tried not to think of it that way, but if it is something I'm probably maybe never going to use again, why should I buy 15 of something, right? I thought about printing them off, and I found some good images, and I thought about doing it that way, but it seemed to me like this would be a good way of doing a theater of the mind style combat and threw it in there. And the party loved it, actually. They said it was a nice change from the other combats they've done where it's all been miniature based and they're having to stare at a map and turn this just being all talk. We even ended up with a really great critical hit where I let Lutao shoot an arrow through 2 of them out of the air because he rolled a 20. And I felt it worked really well. Highly recommend it for that section and that kind of combat, especially if the bats had been involved. I think it would have been, it would have given the party another round of fun in there, and it would have added to the theater of the mind part. Still, highly recommend it. That's how I pulled off that current section. Fast forward a little bit. Now, the trash pile was supposed to be troglodytes. Troglodytes? Troglodytes. Troglodytes. One, again, couldn't find really any miniatures I liked or troglodytes. Don't use troglodytes all that often. In fact, the last time I even remember hearing the name troglodyte was Trouble with Troglodytes back in like AD&D. So, what am I going to do? So I went and I read up on how other people do it. Like Sly Flourishes, he goes through and tells a couple different ways of pulling this off, either adding the troglodytes or using something else. I thought about using another monster here, or a couple of monsters. I ended up falling upon, of all things, going back to my Fraggle Rock days and the living compost heap. Do you remember her? I loved her. Well, why not? So I added, I reskinned a shambling mound to be living trash. I took away the lightning immunities and all that stuff and just made it literally a pile of trash, and I made it susceptible to fire specifically. But it was just a pile of trash. I used almost all the same stats from a Shambling Mound, just kind of redid the immunities, and then used that just to be this giant mound of garbage that would come up and attack and slash with them. That was the original goal. My party ended up not even really... They attacked it a few times to kind of distract it when it was going after the dwarf, but then they rescued the dwarf, and I wasn't going to have it leave because it is the trash. It wanted to stay. Once they left the trash pile, it wasn't going to follow. I thought it was a really good way of doing that, and it actually led to probably one of the funnier moments that happened, at least role-playing wise, is they've rescued the dwarf, the tabaxis run out and grab the shiny bits that she did see and run all the way back, which was actually really awesome, even though she was really tired after that. Man, tabaxis are fast for one round. They all looked at Eddie and asked why Eddie hadn't warned them about the trash pile.
Did you know it was alive?
Yeah.
Why didn't
Isn't
you
your
tell
compost
us?
alive?
No.
I don't care. It's canon now for me that kobolds get rid of their trash by having a monster live in it that eats it. Okay? That's canon. I don't care. That's some funny blank. Good moment. It was a lot of fun. Now we move on to the next chapter, the next room, shall we say. They go into the drake breeding area in the map. And the first giveaway that their presence is completely known by everybody should have been that there is barricades now up in front of the next stage, like the next tunnel going up. That the kobolds have erected a barricade to defend themselves behind. And there's a whole bunch of them standing there at the ready. But they weren't prepared for kobolds to fly with a henchman orc, and so I let it fly. Now, he said she wanted to whisper to Eddie to say, "Hey, I'm your king." I rolled it, and Eddie rolled like an 18 or 19 on the persuasion roll, and he bounced, "I am your king, bow down to me, I fly." And they maybe weren't buying it, but are at least taken aback by a flying Eddie. Specifically, the kobold they all hated and had made fun of and poked at and kicked, is now flying with an orc. Took them back. And then they pressed their luck when Maurice suggested that they drop all their weapons. And so he rolls again, and this time he rolls a 1. And they don't buy it. In fact, the one that does drop his weapons actually ends up firing his crossbow and starts the encounter off. The encounter itself went pretty well. So what did I change? First off, I made the barricade and the kobolds behind it. Partially because they knew the party was coming and they were defending themselves and trying to defend themselves. Second, again, because of the fact that guard drake miniatures and ambush drake miniatures are so hard to find, I was using these plastic lizards I picked up and just reskinned, again, the guard drake stat block and just used these for the miniature in the combat. It worked great. I only put 3 of them in there, and then just lots and lots of kobolds. I took all the kobolds that would have been inside of the barracks and put them there. So they had tons of kobolds to fight through, plus the 3 giant lizards. And then I also rigged up the surprise trap that the kobolds would have done to help get the lizards out and to attack them. I figured the ceiling collapse totally sounded like something that kobolds would do. Let's think about the now and not the future kind of mentality. The combat went great. The party, I felt, really had a good time with it. We had, kobolds flying through the air from kicks and also from being thrown from barbarians. Eddie has now named his rusty short sword Tetanus because it came off of my tongue. I don't know. It was a good time. The barricade really didn't help them too much because everybody leaped over it. I mean, a barricade to a kobold is only like waist high, and Lutau jumped that easy. It was fun. Good times. That's kind of how I handled that one. And that left, actually, nobody else in the barracks. I will point this out, though. The way we kind of played this off is the 2 players that said they wanted to search the barracks were the druid and my Tabaxi rogue, Fire. So Rose says, "I want to search the barracks." The Fire says, "I want to search too." They both roll. Rose ended up rolling really poor. And so I told Rose, yeah, you look around and you see just garbage nests for kobolds. And Fire rolls and ends up getting, I want to say it was like a 19 or a 20, really high. And it's okay, so you search around for about 10 minutes, and you go to every nest, and at every nest you're pulling out more and more coins, gold, copper, silver. You're finding them just buried in there. And by the end of it, she has this pile of trinkets and gold that she then turns around and walks back over. And of course, everybody else is kind of looking at her and then looking at Rose and then looking at her. And she ends up keeping it. But there's a difference in the rolls. And I feel like that's the way I usually do it. If somebody... And multiple people are rolling and they're not doing the whole stacking advantage like some people do, which I have done before, by the way. They didn't say they wanted to work together on it, so I let them roll separately. But I always take the poorest roll and start with them, how they describe what they see, and then work my way up the higher rolls until you get to the person who actually sees the most, if I'm saying it in front of the party at all. And sometimes in these kind of situations, I know I will do the whole whisper thing to another player. I'll send them a text message, write them a note, so that they can decide whether or not they want to tell the rest of the party. The best way I found, if you really want to keep that as secret, is the text message, by the way. We'll use the technology we have. I will text message, I'll continue telling the story, then get to a point where the party is like, all right, and what do you guys do? And then I grab my phone and I start texting away. Hey, yeah, fire, you found, 150 gold coins in that nest. Just, ha ha, smiley face. So, and I'll leave it up to the player. All my players will have their phones with them and leave them on silent, or they're using their phones or their tablets for playing the game, because, again, we're using Beyond. I find that to be really cool. Sliding the paper, whispering, is like you're telling your party that they know that something's going on, that there's something they didn't hear and weren't part of. And that can lead to, like, people then poking at each other until then. But it also depends on the party you got and the players you got. So maybe it'll work for you, maybe it won't. But that's how I handled it. There you go. Next. That's really actually it for the night. I didn't change a lot for this one. I did use my map pieces, my tile pieces, and drew the maps out as best I could. It was a lot of fun, though. I mean, the Theater to the Mind bit with the Sturges was a lot of fun. I think the Compost Monster was a good surprise for everybody. I think they weren't expecting the trash to actually come to life. Even if they didn't finish actually killing, I still gave them experience for it because they still dealt with it. I gave them half, I think. It was still fun. It was a lot of fun. So, about the only other thing I'll mention is, we're far enough along, and they now know the big bad guys. I will let out the giant cat in the bag. If you're playing this kind of game, don't use something that has a sound and thunder effect that's for 300 feet in an enclosed cave, unless you want the entire cavern to know your presence. When Arkin let off Thunderwave in the first barracks that they came across last session, 300 feet of audible sound is heard. In an echoey cave, I basically, in my brain, the whole cave now knows they're there. They were then able to set up defenses and reinforce themselves. The big bad guys that they walked into at the very end have been sitting there waiting. They're ready. They've prepped their spells. They've cast their enchantments. They are ready for combat. There was no surprise coming whatsoever. The kobolds setting up the barricade and the traps, waiting for them. They would do it. They had announced their presence loud as day. If they'd immediately actually gone into the Sturge, I was going to have the Sturge actually attack them as soon as they walked into the fungus and make them actually have to dance around the exploding fungus. However, they did take like an hour rest. I thought about having like search parties, and in my mind maybe there were, but because they'd had the party already escape before, they were kind of already ready for somebody to come back and possibly attack, so they were already on edge in my mind, and so hearing a thunder wave just sent everybody into defensive positions, is how I basically played it off. So that's what they were fighting their way through, is that everybody's been ready for them, except maybe the trash monster. He was just there to eat compost until something moving came through. So because the loud thunder wave went through, the big bad guys all got together. Originally they were in separate rooms. They would have actually been, you could have fought them separately, but the party announced their presence. There's nothing I can do now. That's how they would have reacted. So they have joined forces. You now have Furloom and Sinrath sitting in the same room with 4 gnolls. Here's the other DM tip. This is foreshadowing. Gnolls aren't normally in this game, or in this chapter. I'm adding them. Here's your first sight of the fact that gnolls will play a part in this campaign. We'll see what happens. I'm really looking forward to the next big fight. I think the fight itself is probably going to take most of our night. You have one very large fighter, you have a minor magic user, and you have 4 very large gnolls. I'm not going to give up many more details than that. You have 4 very large gnolls that are going to fight the 7 members of the party plus Eddie. By the way, I do now have a character sheet for Eddie. Eddie has stats now. I'm not just using the same stats from the kobold. So, you got 8, 7.5 versus 6, and one of them's very high powered. I bumped, if you remember from my DM notes from back with the battle with Sinrath, Sinrath's stats got bumped. Originally he was supposed to be CR4. I now have him at CR6. So we'll see how this works. Sinrath got a run for his money when he fought against Nahis by themselves. But now they've got some compatriots. We've got some rain to play into effect here. They're in a very large room. I'm very interested to see how this is going to work. It should be a lot of fun. Well, that's about it. So if you guys do want to help me out, I will never monetize this channel. I hate commercials. But if you do want to support me and help me out with this, click below. I have a card game I created that you can buy. I also make chainmail dice pouches in varying sizes. Speaking of the dice pouches, as of the filming of this, which was November 22nd, 2019, I've decided that when I reach 100 subscribers, I will give away a free medium-sized anodized dice pouch or a large all-silver dice pouch made out of chainmail that I will make for you. All you got to do is subscribe. I will then, when I hit 100 subscribers, I will randomize them all, draw a name, and do a video showing who won at the next video, and I'll ship it to you free of charge. You're going to win it. Feel free to share this, share the video, share my channel. I'll give them away when I hit 100 subscribers. It's that simple. No real big rules or anything. If you have any questions, comments below, by all means, talk with me. I love chatting with people at D&D. Love talking with this kind of stuff. I'm actually hoping to film some more. I got the holidays coming up, so I have some extra time off. And my my folks are coming in. I haven't seen them in 4 years, and it'll be really great. I remember playing games. When I played D&D with them, I was a kid. I would sit on somebody's lap during their campaigns and play Haven the Friendly Ghost and just roll dice. That's my start playing this kind of stuff. So I maybe poke their brains and see what they're doing in their campaign over in Seattle. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Haven the Hare once again, and may you make all of life's saving throws.